Here's the radiator. So this is the front of the car. If we crawl back, we see that the oil pan is here, not to be confused with the transmission, which is going to be downward facing bolt, while the oil pan, sorry if it's disorienting, I'm on my back in the dirt, bubba. The oil pan is going to be with the rear facing bolt. Now, if for whatever reason you change your oil and you put this back and there is still a leak, you might need a new crush washer. They do sell replacements pretty much in any auto parts store, so no problem there. So let's get this off. Remember, a warm car will let out a little more oil, it'll flow a little faster, and definitely don't forget to take that cap off your oil fill. That's gonna allow air to be sucked in through the top, and it's gonna come out here faster. Go up top, loosen your oil. When you undo the oil drain bolt downstairs, you're gonna see that it flows a lot faster. And always put it somewhere obvious so you don't forget to put this back when you're done. Now remember, under your oil should be your oil catch. You can have a bowl, you can have a bucket, you can have your grandmother's salad bowl. I don't care what you use. I like this one because it actually has a plug with a filter. So if it gets super hot and I gotta drop the bolt quickly, it won't go into the oil. It'll be caught right there. Now, depending on whether you have the original parts or if you have aftermarket stuff, in this case, it's gonna be a 15. Sometimes you might get a 14 instead, or a 16. So let's let it rip. Lefty loosey. And if this has been on for a while, you might need an impact wrench or a short breaker bar. That's okay too. Broke it free with the ratchet. You should be wearing gloves just in case you get some on you. Once you work it off with your ratchet, it should become finger loose. So slowly get it. And if you notice that it's gonna start weeping oil, that's when you need to get your hand out of the way quickly. If you need to grab it and just throw the bolt down and get your hand out of the way, be careful. This is gonna be super hot. So once I feel the oil coming down, get your hand out of the way. And let it pour. Again, this is more of an art than a science. And you see that bubbling? That's because there's no air to actually equalize pressure. So what I'm gonna do here is open this air valve. That's gonna equalize pressure. So open that valve and it'll suck it down without that big chugging or gulping. So I recommend investing in one of these air release valve type of catches because these purge valves are great, and they have a drain, so when you want to pour it into a bucket or you take it to a recycling center, you can pour it out through there. Once you got nothing but little drippity drips coming out, replace your clean bolt. Make sure there's no dirt, no debris, no metal shavings, nothing on those threads, and you get them back in. Now you don't got to go too crazy on this because we are going to be torquing it down to spec anyways, but just nice and snug by hand. There we go. All right, not much space in here, but we got our bolt right here. I'm going to torque it down to 25 to 29 foot-pounds. Again, this crush washer has been crushed before, so I'm going to go on the higher side at 28. But again, anywhere between the specs for it is fine. Now we wait for that big click, and that big click will let us know that we are tight and right. Heard that click? One more time. Click. Big click. That's why I love these click styles. I don't like the beeping. All right, so we now have it torqued down to spec. If you want to be extra fancy, you could always spray this down with a brake cleaner just to get all the oil away and check for leaks. So with the car facing forward from the oil pan, we're gonna keep following over, keep going right, and you'll see under this little flap, if we look up in there, that's our oil filter. Let's grab an oil filter wrench. We'll get this off. Make sure to keep your catch can very close by. May not look like a very big filter, but it's definitely full of oil. Once it's broken loose, you can undo the rest by hand. Whoa, here it comes. Here's a great idea to wear eye cover, some kind of glasses, goggles, especially on a windy day like today. Coming in with the new one, if you wanted to be extra careful, you could actually take a Sharpie and just write down the mileage of your current car, just so you know that somebody can see when the last time this was changed was. So it's gonna go in the same way the other ones went, clockwise, and no tools necessary. This you crank down as tight as you can by hand, and please, 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 please make sure that with your old filter, you check to make sure that this rubber gasket is still intact. If it's missing, chances are it's stuck up there. If you put two gaskets on top of each other, you're gonna get a mean leak and you won't know until you turn that car on and you got oil pissing everywhere. And as far as the filter, it's the XG6607, which is the ultra synthetic Fram filter. I don't want anybody saying, oh, why don't you use the Purelator? Why don't you use the mobile one? Why don't you use K&N? Use whatever you want. I don't care. I always use ultra synthetic from Fram because I use full synthetic. So let's go up top so we can fill this. You're going to be using 5W30. So remember, nothing else. 5W30. I'm using Mobile One full synthetic high mileage because the vehicle is above 70,000 miles or 75,000 miles. So that's just what I use. Anything that can rejuvenate seals or help with leaks is definitely a good thing. With anything that's creeping up on the 150,000 mile mark, you definitely want to protect your babies. Last thing is, of course, if it's windy, clean up any oil, spray this down with some brake cleaner, get your oil cap back on, do not forget that. You start the engine, it pressurizes, you're gonna paint the entire engine bay with oil. Be careful. As a side note, make sure you didn't hit anything, undo any clips, check any hoses, anything. If you checked your dipstick, make sure it's actually sealing down with the O-ring, anything at all. We're gonna run the car for a little bit, then check the oil levels. If it's too low, you add. If it's too much, you might have to drop some. So always follow the manufacturer's specs. She's gonna sound a little funny because one, she's on an incline, and two, she's empty. Gotta get that oil circulating. I'm also gonna take it down off of the lift. So remember, if you're up on ramps, always have your e-brake in case something rolls. You're not stressing out the transmission having to hold the weight of the car. All right, she's level, everything's good. If you hear any weird sounds, you may have overfilled it or maybe something's going wrong. If you hear sputtering or anything weird, maybe you left your oil cap off or you didn't put enough oil, so be careful. Otherwise, you just changed your oil. I'm very proud of you. This is something you should always be doing for yourself. It saves you time, saves you money, and anytime you get experience, it's always worth more than anything else.